Every club.
Every day.
The Global Sports Podcast Network.
Hello and welcome back to Daily Palace Podcast, brought to you by the Global Sports Podcast Network. I'm Joe Lodge and I'm feeling refreshed having spent my Tuesday watching a relaxingly uneventful game of football. I heart Jean-Phillipe Mateta and Jean-Phillipe Mateta hearts me. With me today is Dan Tanner. How are you doing, Dan?
I'm doing all right. I'm very much getting the feeling of deja vu from yesterday. So weren't we doing this exact thing the other day?
We were doing this exact thing, this exact time.
About an hour.
24 hours ago. It's all getting quite Bill Murray up in here. There should be some variation tomorrow, probably with the potential crossover with the City lads. Today we're going to review Palace's 1-0 win away at Portman Road and discuss some unwanted attention that Palace's captain may have brought to the team, which has been in the news the last few days, and briefly touch on the Eagles' third round FA Cup draw. So, Tuesday nights under the lights, Palace got their first away win of the season. Was the 1-0 a deserved result for you, Dan, in this one?
From what I saw of the highlights and everything, I think it was a very much deserved performance. We basically called what Palace's strengths were going to be in yesterday's podcast, them being very good on the counter and Ipswich not being quite sort of talented enough to deal with Eze and Mateta. Them linking up was just Ipswich couldn't handle them, particularly Eze's sort of movement. He was going from one side to the other. And I think he even got a couple of shots off, especially in the box, which is something I've definitely commented on over the last few months. If he wants to try and get a couple more goals, try and make him a little bit more high percentage. And Mateta's goal was class. It was a nice chip across the keeper. And I know you're looking forward to talking about it, Joe. I can see it on your face. He's like, Mateta's scored a goal. I want to talk about it.
Not just there you go, any goal. I mean, we'll come back to that, and got some questions planned to ask on that. But I agree. I think as our overall performance, 1-0 was a very deserved result for Palace. I think they did a really good job of striking the balance between solidity and creativity. It would have been easy in a way to go there and think we're the established Premier League club, we've got to impose ourselves on the game, be aggressive. They did that to a certain extent, but Ipswich actually had about 55% possession. Palace used their press in a more restrained way than they did earlier in the season. Not so they weren't putting pressure on the ball, but they were doing it in a way which stopped Ipswich building up rather than a way which was trying to harry possession off them. And it was very effective and didn't get dragged too far out of their own shape, the Palace boys, in that sense. So limited the room for Ipswich to attack. It wasn't perfect. They had some promising attacks from wide areas, which some of them Palace dealt with well. Some of them they got a bit lucky with, maybe no one quite connecting with some dangerous balls from likes of Hutchinson and Davis. But on the whole, I think it's an encouraging performance. It was the sort of most undramatic positive result that Palace have had all season. When it was competent, they went in seemingly with calm heads and feeling they are the experienced Prem team, the team with the quality, and if they keep organised, it will show. And it maybe wasn't as entertaining as other games or as fluid, but it was pretty effective, and I think sort of fairly encouraging. But on that, follow-up question, Dan, is this what you would describe as an enjoyable match?
I wouldn't have particularly gone enjoyable because looking at the stats, it was very they were both going. It's almost like a rock and a hard place. They were both about 50-50 possession, more or less. Attacks were kind of equal as well. And towards the end, we could have conceded a very, very silly little goal that sort of flashed in front of, flashed across the 6-yard box, and could have been a sitter, almost like ones we had at Newcastle, playing Newcastle the other day. So it's still not completely faultless. We got very lucky, especially I think there was a Henderson save which he didn't really know anything about, and it just hit his knee and just stopped. So we rode our luck a little bit, and it was nowhere near as a dominating kind of performance that we did against Newcastle, but it was competent enough. And against a team like Ipswich, we should be trying to get a 1-0 result is fine. It's 3 points. It doesn't matter how many go in as long as you get the 3 points at this stage. And now it's to look forward to the rest of our December, coming up against 2 title contenders and the derby game. So
I think you're right. This game, it was not. If you were trying to convert someone into a football fan, it wasn't the game you'd show them. I think what we're seeing a little bit is Palace collectively accepting that they can't be the entertaining, swashbuckling side they were last season, because they just don't have, at least not yet, no one has that sort of telepathy, that understanding that Alicia and Eze had together. So when we do try and be a bit more dynamic and flowing, more often than not, the moves just break down and leave them out of position. Whereas last season, at the end, they would have connected with each other, been really dangerous, and by virtue of that, if not resulting in a goal, resulting in a corner, resulting in something positive for Palace, not just losing the ball in a position of vulnerability. And you can see now that they are accepting necessary increase in rigidity, I think, as a front three, with Eze being the exception, that he can still float and link up. But yeah, the whole unit is not going to move as fluidly, and I think that's probably a good thing for the time being, with the personality understanding. I actually found it, with all the drama that's followed Palace games this season, I found this one kind of reassuringly dull. I quite enjoyed it, relaxing. But I am a man who can sit through hours of darts and spent a lot of his afternoon listening to Elbow, so I might not be the best judge of entertainment. But yeah, we'll take a quick pause there for an advert and continue our discussion of the game when we're back. Here at Global Sports Podcast Network, we spent a lot of time selecting our delivery platform. Zencastr came out the clear winner. With 4K video recording from your phone and AI editing that automatically removes all those ums and ahs, it's super easy to start a podcast that sounds great and is delivered efficiently. If you're ready to tell your story, check out the link in the show description to learn more about Zencastr. Yeah, so I cut you off on this earlier, Dan, because I wanted to discuss it in more depth in a separate section. Jean-Phillipe Mateta's goal. Talk to me about that.
Oh well, it's a great goal. Eze kind of gets it on the left wing, takes out I think two of the Ipswich defenders just with a little bit of a turn and a bit of skill. Kind of lobs the ball forward a bit, and Mateta is kind of running onto it. He's still on the left-hand side of the 18-yard box, and just kind of chips it over the goalie, across the goal, and it's a very, very nice, sweet finish, sort of very reminiscent of some of the ones that Thierry Henry used to do back in the early 2000s. Just that deft little touch, just no real effort to it, and it just goes in the back of the net. When then he celebrates like he's won the World Cup, and you hear this boom from the away Palace fans as well. You can just about hear it on the audio. So,
I loved everything about this Jean-Phillipe Mateta goal and performance generally. As you say in the goal, it was truly wonderful, or as he put it himself in his post-match interview, magnifique. His combination of quick feet and strength left Greaves stumbling over like a horse that hasn't learned to use its legs yet, like a little mare. And in all game long, he just dominated those centre backs. I think he left a physical mark on O'Shea with a tussle there, which led to his head being opened up in the most gross way I've seen a head opened up since Pulp Fiction. So that was thank the Amazon TV directors for sharing that one with us. But the psychological scars on Greaves, he just completely dominated. He was herring around the pitch all game right until the end. He was sprinting around to put the pressure on in a game where many others looked weary. And his post-match press conference or interview rather on pitch side was outstanding. It was a masterclass in saying all the things that your PR managers have told you you're not supposed to say from the press conference. He said, like, what did he say? One was, this is a good time to play Man City, which I thought was hilarious. Hilarious statement. Another was, yes, we said this was a must-win. We think this is a must-win game, which again, you're absolutely not supposed to say. That's
not supposed to say that. No.
Another was, they asked him about his poor run. And he went, "I'll still score goals. Don't worry." Nice.
See that kind of confidence. That's what Palace fans love. That just
I love him.
He doesn't mind. He doesn't care. It's great.
Yeah,
we love entertainers.
I think on a serious note, it's really helpful, I'm sure, in the changing room to have a figure like that who just will not be perturbed no matter how bad the football is, no matter how bad the form is. He believes himself. He loves what he's doing, and I think that positivity can only stand to benefit Palace, regardless of Mateta's form in any given week. So yeah, great to see him back amongst the goals, and what a finish. Did anybody else stand out for you from a Palace point of view in this one, Dan?
I don't. Well, Eze was pretty effective. They really couldn't handle his movement at all. You can tell that it sort of was like a class apart of this international football against sort of guys that have come through like the Championship or some being second or whatever string at one of the bigger clubs. He just kind of walked through them a couple of times. Hendo, as I mentioned earlier, had an absolutely insane save, which he didn't have any right to actually save whatsoever. We just got incredibly lucky there. And on the Ipswich side, Delap was fairly sort of... He had his moments where he could have been sort of a little bit more deadly, as I think I pointed out yesterday as well. But just not as effective as he probably wanted to be, because it was very much a sort of a stalemate. It was a grind-out football game, so it was it came down to literally the one goal, and that's there wasn't really that much. We were fairly comfortable with it, and it just sort of we got the 3 points. So other than that, I don't think there's much to say. We did what we were supposed to do.
I think you're right. It wasn't really a game of outstanding performances, but rather a sort of competence all round, and a team that was sort of in a good way playing within itself, understanding its limits and taking confidence from that kind of control. I think Eze was good, as you highlight. You still feel that he's easing his way back into his football, but you could just see the quality oozing out of him every time he took a touch, pretty much, and really helped out a few times when Ipswich were pressing higher. He came really deep to pick the ball up, which in a way is not where you want him, but it's a useful thing for him to be able to do. And having him there to shimmy away from a few players and just progress it forward with Palace was really pleasing. And I think good performance from him. I think Guehi also had a good game. We'll talk about him later for things that he perhaps is not undeserving of criticism for, but he in this game played really well on the pitch. His sweeping was really nice. A few times that Ipswich looked to be getting behind, balls into channels for Delap, and he came right across to the opposite side of the defence, made some really good tackles on his own side, wasn't dribbled past once, which I think is not that easy in a wide role in that back three. And as ever, was just very tidy on the ball. So another excellent performance from Mark Guehi. Really is a top quality player. On the optimism meter, where should Palace fans be now after that game, do you think?
It's still early days because we are still struggling to get results, as the Newcastle one and even the Villa one proved that we are now starting to score. So it's a step in the right direction, but we still haven't got there yet. We're still not sort of can be comfortable in a game. We can't go 2-0 up and just cruise out the result. We are fighting tooth and nail for every single shot and every single sort of result now, which is kind of it's what we basically walked ourselves into this season. I don't know why, for whatever reason. It's just this is the hand we've been dealt this season. So until we start getting a couple more on the bounce, so after Christmas, because I don't think we're going to do much. Let's just say it would be a Christmas miracle if we can get 4 points out of this week, this 3-week period, but I don't see that happening, being the realist. But it's still if we can get some results together, get a sequence of wins that we should be doing, I think it'll be a lot more. We'd be a lot more comfortable. The fans will feel a lot more comfortable as well. So you can start to begin to believe, I think, is where you can say this. You can start, because the last 3 performances have been a much better performance all around. The players are starting to realise the system and what's required of them, but it's keeping the momentum going and also trying to keep like major injuries to a minimum as well. Because I think I don't think there are any new ones, but we're still waiting on Wharton to come back. Kamada's suspended for another couple of games as well. And then 1 or 2 others I think are still on the injury list as well. So it's a step in the right direction, but it's still early days.
Yeah, I think you're right. Palace still very much in the mire, as you highlight. They still only won this game 1-0. Scoring goals is still a bit of a problem, and if scoring goals is a bit of a problem, winning games is a bit of a problem. Nevertheless, it does sort of cap off a run of, I think, 6 games, which haven't been that easy. It hasn't been complete pushover opposition, in which Palace have managed to take 9 points, I think. So that is a big improvement. Been difficult to beat in that time, and also got 4 points from 2 games away at potential relegation rivals, the way the table looks at the moment, in Ipswich and Wolves. So I think there is plenty of positivity to be taken from that, and Palace should bear that in mind when they're about to go on a run where they might get sort of no points at all from 3 or 4 games in the league. So I think it's like there is some cause for optimism. There are still problems. You don't see much to make you think Palace are going to suddenly now fly up the table and finish 8th or something like that. But I think, it's cautious optimism is reasonable at this stage. On that resoundingly positive note, let's take a little break for a word from the network and discuss the last bits for today's podcast. This podcast is part of the Global Sports Podcast Network, the only network bringing you exclusive daily news and views on your Premier League team, the Premier League, women's football and fantasy football. A unique listening experience that puts fans first, bringing you the very latest breaking news from your team. Subscribe wherever you get your podcasts and make us your first listen every day. Global Sports Podcast Network, every club, every day. So after the weeks of speculation about him moving to Newcastle as we approached deadline day in the summer, I didn't think it was possible for Guehi to generate more bothersome headlines. But much of discussion around Tuesday's game centered around his writing I Heart Jesus on his rainbow laces captain's armband against Newcastle before writing Jesus Hearts You on it for the Ipswich game. He's escaped punishment for violating the FA's rules about displaying religious symbols. But I don't know, how do you feel about this, Dan? Is it kind of not really the point, right?
It's not really the point, but it's also this entire game. One of the big things was the captain's armband, because the captain on the other side refused to wear the rainbow one for religious reasons. So you're arguing two sides of the same coin here. It's just very weird. It's like if Guehi decided, like, I'm assuming he's probably religious if he has to put, if he's putting that on. If he refused to do it on religious reasons, I don't think anybody would have had a problem, and probably Palace would have backed his decision, like Ipswich did with Mosey. So, but because he actually wrote it on, that seems to be the issue. And he's basically gotten away at the moment with a bit of a slap on the wrist. So I don't know if he's going to do it again. We'll see.
Yeah, I don't know if there's another game in this period for, because it's a very short period where the rainbow laces are on and all this. And that's what the armband's touching. So I'm not sure if there are any more games where he'll have the decision to make. I know what you mean. I think it would have gone much more unnoticed if he just didn't wear it. I felt attention was drawn to him first, and then Morsey inadvertently from it. He won't be punished by the FA. I think that rule is a bit silly anyway, that they've got about religious images and messages, given that it's kind of crazy.
Mine's more the fact that some of them they'll accept and some of them they won't. It's like, okay.
No, footballers are covered in tattoos of crucifixes and they pray when they see it's, I think it's a bit of a pushing water up a hill, really, if they're trying to ban a religious expression in football. I don't love it though. I think if he'd done it once, I could write off as a bit of a sort of thoughtless decision to use a lighter canvas to write an expression of his love for Jesus on the armband. I think it's without the fact he did it again makes me think he is does feel it's a caveat that he needs to sort of put on the armband, his support for rainbow laces, and without an explanation from him, based on the scraps that he's given us and his dad's given us, it hits me. I think this is maybe even generous reading of it. It hits my kind of eyes and ears as sort of a statement of he's wearing the armband because his Christianity teaches him that queer people deserve love and tolerance, but also he fundamentally thinks that his religious beliefs wrong, and I think that's a bad message for Palace fans, people in the club, possibly people in the dressing room might feel quite alienated by that, and I'm a bit disappointed to see that from the captain. It leaves a bit of a bitter taste on otherwise pleasing performance for me, I feel.
But hopefully he can learn a lesson from this, and maybe sort of like either if the same situation comes up, do what any other one that has any kind of objections to it on religious basis, just refuse. Go, I'm not doing it because of this, and then 9 times out of 10 the club's going to support your decision. So
not kind of get sucked into making a statement about it and
or something. If you just go, right, for whatever reason, this is why, and then leave it at that.
I think it's created, it's kind of inadvertently, sure not intentionally, created a scene which has made it more of a thing than it perhaps needed to be with Margay. But I'm sure he's still got the support of those in the changing room and stuff. He seems like a nice boy, but I disagree with him on this one. I feel like that was a misstep and not really the right message to be sending. But anyway, moving on from that, something else that happened this week was the FA Cup third round draw. You may have seen the headlines that there's a big fixture between a team from London and one from the Manchester area. That's right, it's the Eagles who'll be travelling up to Stockport in January. What are your thoughts on this one then?
I'm ecstatic for it. For once, we don't get a Premier League team straight out of the draw. We traditionally get somebody like that's around us in the table for the first round of the FA Cup, and we don't go anywhere. Last time we had a lower league team, I think we had a really nice run that actually got us all the way to the final, so it might be a good omen. But either way, it's just a nice one of not having to play Villa or Everton in the FA Cup when we're fighting them out in the Premier League as well. So it was also kind of because I was watching it live, just happened to catch it, and we were just the last ones in the pot. So it's the two balls as I was like, are we going to be home or are we going to be away?
Yeah. It does somewhat remove a jeopardy when your last team's in the pod. So I think it's a fun draw, Stockport, though. They're kind of... Well, it's one thing's good that it's very close to me here in Manchester. So who knows? I might see if there's any way I can swing myself a ticket in the away end. I've been to Edgeley Park for a game before. It's always a good atmosphere. They fly a Uruguayan flag at match day in reference to an old manager from Uruguay, which is a fun little quirk, and might get a really good performance out of Munoz and Lerma if we put them on. So,
we'll just sort of raise the flag and try to get them.
And Stockport are playing well. They're fifth in the table in a pretty competitive division with big spenders like Wrexham and Birmingham. So I think they'll have a good go at it, and it'll be a good FA Cup tie. I think that's what the Cup's all about. So yeah, bring it on. Nice one, Stockport.
I don't think Palace have played them since we were in the old Division 1, so it's been a while. So this could be a good one.
I think Palace's time since then's been a bit rocky. Then
yeah, they've kind of gone in opposite directions, really, haven't they?
Yeah. Well, I think that's a good place to wrap it up for today. Thanks for joining me, Dan.
Yep, no worries. Always a pleasure.
And thank you for listening. Listen again tomorrow and give us 5 stars if you've listened to this point and enjoyed it. As people say, if you've not enjoyed it, then keep your opinions to yourself.
Every club, every day. The Global Sports Podcast Network.